Good morning. I just want to make sure, thank you, Keith. Let's try that again. Good morning, everyone. Outstanding. Can folks hear me in the back? And on that room, outstanding. How about in the front? You guys hear me all right? Good, excellent. Welcome to our symposium on child sexual abuse from a public health perspective. Welcome to those of you who are in the audience, to those of you who are joining us via our live stream. We are delighted to host you, and I believe this will be our largest audience ever, so thank you. My name is Elizabeth Letourneau, and I am the director of the Moore Center for the Prevention of Child Sexual Abuse and a professor in the Department of Mental Health in the Johns Hopkins Bloomberg School of Public Health. We are delighted to have you with us. The Moore Center has been hosting this symposium for 6 years now. Our vision is a world free from child sexual abuse. Our mission to enable this vision works through a combination of research, education, advocacy, communication, and policy. You will hear about our research efforts later today and those of our colleagues, including Professors Ben Matthews and Donald Palmer. Our educational efforts include mentoring doctoral, master's, and undergraduate students to be the next generation of public health scientists with a strong focus on abuse prevention. I'm grateful to have these students in my life and for their support of today's symposium. Also falling under education, of course, is our symposium. And for the first time ever, we're offering continuing education credits. Our communication efforts aim to provide objective and accurate information about the prevention of child sexual abuse to the media, to policymakers, to our multidisciplinary stakeholders in law enforcement, child welfare, education, youth-serving organizations, and elsewhere. Our advocacy and our policy efforts support improvements in how we prevent and address child sexual abuse at the local, state, national, and now I'm pleased to say international levels. You will hear more about our policy efforts from Delegate C.T. Wilson, who provides our keynote presentation this year. More about C.T. in just a moment. We have an amazing program lined up for today. I am enormously grateful to our speakers, who include the child safety leaders from the Boy Scouts of America, from the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops. Is the deacon here? He'll get here later. Good, as long as he's showing up. And from the Department of Social Services here in Maryland. And of course, this year, our speakers include 3 women featured on the Netflix documentary, The Keepers. How many in the room have heard of The Keepers? Many of you, outstanding. We are grateful to have these women join us. And we will, theirs is the final panel of the day. We'll present a brief trailer of the documentary shortly before they speak. In addition to our speakers, I'd like to call out a few of our audience members who are both here in person and also with us via our live stream. The Office of U.S. Senator Chris Van Hollen is represented. The Office of Congressman Andy Harris is represented. The Department of Justice Smart Office is going to be represented, or is here, thank you, excellent, is here. And the Governor's Office of Crime Control. We are also joined by several of our partners in the fight against child sexual abuse. I'm not going to name them all, and apologies if I don't name yours, but these include the State Council on Child Abuse and Neglect, the Family Tree, the Baltimore Child Abuse Center, Reliance, who's one of our funding partners, and the Hand Foundation, who is our newest funding partner. And of course, we are joined by, and profoundly grateful to, our founding benefactors, Dr. Stephen Moore, Mrs. Julia Moore, and their daughter, Chloe. Welcome. Thank you all for joining us today. I have a few housekeeping notes. Your folders include our center's annual report. It includes a brochure detailing today's events, and you have blank index cards. These are for our afternoon panels. We do not do open mic, but we do encourage you to write questions on the index cards, and then we'll have people, volunteers, to gather those and put them to the panel members. There's also a very brief survey. We ask you to complete that survey. We are very serious about meeting our audience's needs, and we truly welcome and listen to your feedback. In fact, the reason that we have continuing education units today is because of your feedback from previous symposia. And just a brief note about those CEUs. You must sign in if you're getting CEUs, and you have to complete the evaluation that you receive when you sign in. At the sign-in desk is Ms. Shantae Hatcher, who can help you with that if you need any help. Also included within your materials is an announcement for our one-day Summer Institute course on child sexual abuse prevention, which will be held Thursday, June 7th. As you can see from the brochure, we've got breaks built into the day's morning and afternoon sessions, and we'll stop from lunch at about 11:30 to 1. And I'll tell you more about lunch right before we break for lunch. But those of you who are scheduled for a luncheon, we'll have volunteers to take you to your room. And for those of you who are not scheduled for a luncheon, we've got recommendations out at the registration desk. I will note that everyone is welcome to join us for our third annual student poster session. The student poster session runs from 12:30 to 1 o'clock up in Feinstein Hall, and there's signage to guide people there. We'll have coffee, tea, and cookies for everyone at the student poster session. All right, now it is my pleasure, and it's also my honor, to introduce Delegate C.T. Wilson, our keynote speaker. Delegate Wilson was born and raised in the Midwest. Throughout his early childhood, he was moved in and out of foster homes and orphanages. In early adolescence, he was placed in a permanent home, and from a difficult childhood, he learned that obstacles meant to limit him could be turned into opportunities. To escape poverty at the age of 18, he joined the United States military as an enlisted combat soldier. It was the military that taught Delegate Wilson the true value of justice, discipline, and hard work. He served in the Persian Gulf and Bosnia-Herzegovina in both the combat and medical units, and was honorably discharged after 7 years. Delegate Wilson went on to earn a bachelor's degree in psychology from Upper Iowa University and a Juris Doctor from Howard University School of Law. He was admitted to the Maryland Bar in 2003. Delegate Wilson began working as an assistant state's attorney to Prince George's County. Shortly thereafter, he became the chief prosecutor in his district. After 7 years at the state's attorney's office, he began work as a solo practitioner with a focus on criminal defense. In 2010, Delegate Wilson was elected to represent the 28th District in the House of Delegates at the Maryland General Assembly. He currently serves on the Economic Matters Committee and the Joint Committee on Cybersecurity, Information Technology, and Biotechnology. As a delegate, he advocates for issues about which he is passionate, including child abuse, foster youth, and veterans. I believe you will experience some of his passion firsthand shortly. In his own remarks, I believe Delegate Wilson will describe his efforts to extend the statute of limitations in civil action cases for victims of child sexual abuse. That work was featured on the Netflix documentary that we'll be hearing more about later today. I would like to mention 2 other bills that Delegate Wilson introduced this year. House Bill 1072, Child Sexual Abuse Prevention, Instruction, and Training, aims to improve how we address child sexual abuse within school settings by shifting the onus for preventing abuse from children to adults, and by supporting a more evidence-informed approach. In particular, House Bill 1072 recognizes the importance not only of training educators, administrators, and other school staff and volunteers, but also the importance of ensuring that training is evidence-based. House Bill 1072 was approved unanimously by the House, by the Senate, and was signed into law on April 10th by Governor Hogan. House Bill 1572, Child Sexual Abuse Prevention, the Employment Process, is a companion bill that seeks to improve how our educational system responds to child sexual abuse concerns, particularly by addressing the secrecy within which such concerns often play out and which sometimes permits educators with concerning behavior to move between schools. That bill passed out of the House Ways and Means Committee and out of the House of Delegates, again, unanimously. It did not make it out of the Senate Education, Health, and Environmental Affairs Committee, and we hope a revised bill will be reintroduced next year. The Moore Center was proud to partner with Delegate Wilson, with the State Council on Child Abuse and Neglect, and with others to support both of these bills. And we look forward to continuing to support these and future efforts to bring informed and innovative policy to the prevention of child sexual abuse in Maryland. Will you please join me in welcoming Delegate Wilson?
Good morning. Thank you very much. It is definitely my pleasure to be here today. As they said, my name is C.T. Wilson. I'm a husband of a wife who's happy with me sometimes. The father of 3 beautiful girls who seem to be happy with their daddy all the time. I'm a former chief prosecutor. I'm an attorney, and I've had for the last 8 years the pleasure of serving my county, Charles County, as a member of the Maryland House of Delegates. I'm very grateful to be here for all the people that are here, for the Moore Center, for Claudia, Wendy, people of the SCAN organization, to the Moore family for what they're doing. Because when I finished that Netflix documentary, I pretty much was done putting my personal business out there for everybody to know. Contrary to popular belief, not all elected officials are public people. I'm not. I could have gone a lifetime without telling people about what happened. But in working with Dr. Letourneau and SCAN, I realized there was more to it. It wasn't just a poor me story. It was about what we can do next to stop it. And that's why I'm here. And that's why we're all here. But I have to tell you a little bit about myself because you'll understand why I'm here. If you see my reputation in Annapolis, people consider me angry, distant, unfriendly, a contrarian, not a team player, a loner. I'll take that, especially from other politicians. But tell you a little bit about my background so you might understand why I'm that person. I'm the oldest of 17 children. By the time I was 4, I had 3 sisters, Heather, Holly, and Candy. My mother was a drug addict, and she would leave us for long stints of time by ourselves, and so I was forced to feed and take care of my little sisters, and I did so. My mother would leave us with strangers. She would have parties at the house, and bad things happen to little people in those drug environments. I remember the last night my mother and I were together, we spent the day together, and it was unique because normally my sisters are around, and my mom was asleep on the couch. But this day was different. My sisters were gone. It was just us. We ate Pringles, we watched TV, and it was fairly unique. I'll never forget it. I know that it got dark outside. It was getting dark, and my mom, she took me to the front door. I didn't have a name. I wasn't born in a hospital, so my name was Buddy. She said, Buddy, she gave me my little stuffed dog and said, today you need to learn how to be a man. We walked outside to the porch, and I remember letting go of my hand. And it was like slow motion because when I turned around, the door had shut. And she locked me out the house. And I stood there banging on that door for hours, it seemed, until social services came to get me. That was the last time I ever saw my sisters, my family, my mother again. And they put me in foster care. Now, foster care when I was growing up wasn't a very streamlined event. Sometimes you're in boys' homes, sometimes you're in group homes, sometimes you're just in a home. But I had no one to depend on. No steady family or friends. I was constantly, consistently moving. By the time I was 9 years old, I could barely read. I was always the only black child, always in all white homes. I learned how to speak as proper as I can and comb my hair straight as I can. but nothing really worked. I would watch individuals that were in homes with me get adopted. The problem is, see, all that suffering and neglect made me a perfect child for a specific type of individual. And so when I turned 9 years old, I was told I was lucky because although I was 9 years old, I was going to be adopted. Tom and Millie Wilson. Tom Wilson was a kindergarten teacher, he was a Cub Scout master, a youth minister, and he was a pedophile. And they placed me into this home. And from the ages of 9 to 15, I had what started as a very difficult life, going to downright hell. Because part of the problem with the foster care system is that there's no good touch, bad touch. You don't learn anything. So you don't really know what the definition of affection is. So what starts as, a grown man peeing in the bowl beside you, or sleepovers, or camping trips, escalates into something much worse. And it did. And I realized that it was wrong. And once I realized it was wrong, it stopped being any guise of affection and pretense, and it was for punishment. And from that day on, from any indiscretion, the smallest mistake, I would be beaten and beaten and beaten, and then abused. There's no way to sit here and describe the pain of being beaten and sodomized as a little boy, day after day, week after week, for years, and being punched and kicked until you were forced to ask for that very sexual abuse just to stop the pain. There's no way to explain the mental anguish that a little boy goes through and the confusion. There's nothing I can say. There's no more gruesome details to provide because if you've never experienced it, you're not going to get it. So I know that as soon as I turned 18, I did what any sane little man would do, and I got out of there. I tried to escape, joined the military. As you heard, I was educated. I pushed myself because I've said, if nobody else is going to believe in me and if nobody else is going to be there for me, I'm going to be there for myself. I don't need anybody because nobody's going to need me. But what I noticed is the damage continued to amass. It continued to toll. Because you can't subject a child to that kind of horror and expect them to not be scarred. The older I get, the more of an impact I realize it has on me. And I use the word has, not had. I have an incredibly violent temper. You see, when you're a little boy and that happens, so you have to prove your masculinity. The two ways that you do that are by fighting and by womanizing. I thank God for the military because I was allowed to do a lot of both. That's a joke. You can laugh. Come on now. Also, a lot of self-medication. I was never a big guy for drugs, but I loved to drink, and I loved adrenaline. I got high off just the excitement, which was also considered suicidal. See, I realized, if I didn't have any value here in this country, I could die a hero somewhere else. So I volunteered to do as much as I could, no matter what it was, because I had to have something. Another big issue you see is disconnect. Because when enough people turn a blind eye to your pain as a little boy and pretend things don't happen, when the people that you trust the most violate your very soul, you have to let go of your humanity. You have to, because otherwise there's too much. It's just the confusion, the anger. So you have to just disconnect yourself from people around you. So for me, relationships are very difficult. I've been married 3 times. My friends, I don't keep them long. I've been fired from more jobs than I could thank. Lost rank in the military repeatedly. I think I got out a lower rank than I came in. Because it is very hard for me to be a regular person. I don't sleep. When you go to sleep, you start, in your mind's eye, you're listening to the creak of that door when you're like a 7-year-old little boy would. And you're always on edge. Because, when the barriers go down, you know what else happens? The dreams come. The problem is they're not dreams. They're memories. They're never dreams. I never dream about anything about my military career. I remember my childhood. Those are my nightmares, my reality. So I'm consistently edgy. My synapses fire all the time, day and night when I'm asleep or I'm awake. I have constant thoughts. But the problem is, a human body's not meant to go this way. I had my first heart attack when I was 41 years old, April 26th of 2014. Because the demons are right below the surface. Always. They're waiting to find a little breach in the armor. And there's no amount of counseling that's really going to bring me back to normal, because you can't undo what happened. You can tell me, oh, it's not my fault. Yeah, I know that. That's not the problem. The problem is that it happened. The scars run too deep. So what I do is, my solution is vigilance, constant vigilance. I realize I'm not a normal person. So I got to ask myself, what would a normal person do? I have to second guess every reaction. My reactions are never positive. I have zero trust. I love being angry. I feed off anger and violence like nobody's business. I've had to learn over the years, that's what's killing me. And to stop reacting and think twice for everything. Every morning I get up and I have to look at myself in the mirror, and I always, splash some cold water on my face, realize I ain't never been shit, I ain't gonna be shit. But you know what? Today I'm gonna make something of myself. I realize that all the pain and misery I go through isn't my family's fault. And I realize that the one thing I would never want them to do is be able to excuse their daddy for his past. The good thing is I'm a little too hard-headed and just not that bright, so I don't really know how to give up. I don't. I mean, I might not be able to recognize a sunny day, but I keep looking for it. And I keep plodding forward, because that's what I'm supposed to do. So it's easy to see why I'm angry, or why I appear angry, because, I've had a very tough life. I just showed you the peak. My trust is gone, and I'm now part of a system that let me down. But I'll tell you this, I'm also blessed, because I was a little boy that nobody wanted, that was only fit for beating, touching, and abuse. I get to take the same steps as our first president of these United States, George Washington. He walked those steps when he surrendered his military standing to become our president in Annapolis. And I get to take those stairs, and I do every day, rain, sleet, or shine. So this is not about a poor me story or how great I am. I just really wanted to put you guys in the shoes of an individual who's been through abuse. I understand why this organization is so important. I want to put the face on damages of child sex abuse, but also the value of not giving up. So I'm not as angry as I appear, but I do have a problem, and I have a chip on my shoulder, and I'll tell you why. Because I've fought in Annapolis for victims, and I've seen an attitude that is very disheartening. I put a bill in to extend the statute of limitations for victims of child sex abuse, and became the enemy of the Catholic Church. I'm not Catholic. I have a very sick joke, but I used to tell people, I was raised Catholic, but I was molested Baptist. Sorry, but you gotta deal with however you deal with it. At the end of the day, I wasn't trying to be an enemy to anybody, and this ended up being this huge issue. I had men of God tell me how I'm destroying the church. That it's a business too. Well, God bless you if you think that's what it is. I've watched our politicians ignore child sex abuse. And I know it's an issue because nobody wants to even acknowledge it. But you're an elected official. This is our job. We are problem solvers. And I watch these people fight. I explain to them about how there's suppression issues. Clearly, you don't want to acknowledge it happened. You learn to live with it for as long as you can. You know what you learn to do when you're an abused child? Lie. You're definitely going to lie to yourself. You're going to lie to others. You're definitely going to lie to yourself. And if you're lucky, you're going to realize it was wrong. If you're lucky, that wasn't love and affection. Sometimes you don't even recognize that it's damaging. You just think, oh, okay, I've made it through. And as you get older, things don't work the way they should. And you now realize this is the reason. I got the law to 38 in Maryland. This is the best as I could do. I'll say this, I had to fight the church to do it. I had to fight individuals to do it. And the only reason it was done is because I had a bunch of cameras following me around for a few days. And I'll be honest, at the time, I didn't know this was gonna be a Netflix documentary. People film me all the time. I'm not famous, but I'm an elected official. Y'all love to catch us slipping up and cursing, so, which is really not hard if you follow me around. In fact, that gentleman right there who filmed me, I think realizes that, yeah, I'm a very fallible person. But I had no idea that that's what it was going to be. But I'll tell you, the only reason that bill passed, it passed unanimously in both houses. And everybody stood and cheered, and I was furious. Because those goddamn cowards couldn't even vote against a bill they've been trying to kill for 20 goddamn years. They didn't have the intestinal fortitude to stand up for something that quietly they were trying to kill. It's very disheartening, very disappointing. I know people say, you know, good ideas take years. They shouldn't. And you got to play the game. You shouldn't. Some things are just the right thing to do. But when I go up there, hearing people testify, I just thought that if a colleague were to say something, that would be different. I didn't come up there talking about this. I waited 4 years to even bring it up because I did not want to be identified as a victim of child sex abuse because I'm so much more than that. And I figured once I talked to them, then maybe they would hear my story. No. See, the powers that be didn't want to hear that. That's why I appear angry. That's why I work out in the gym every day. That's why I'm the person I am, because by hook or crook, I'm going to get this done. And if I can't use my mind, I will use my physical presence to do it. And as the good doctor said, we were able to pass a bill for instruction for teachers. But my question is, why couldn't we pass the trash bill? All I wanted to do was say, you know what, if you're a school and you've disciplined an individual for improper sexual behavior and they go get another job, you should be able to tell that school without fear of suit, hey, you might want to watch this guy. Because see, we know that right now in the world of lawyers, I am one, that there's very litigious society. And so what do you have to give if you're an employer? Neutral. All you have to give, you can only give a neutral recommendation, right? Because otherwise you're going to get sued. Teachers and students should not have to deal with that. Schools should not be stuck in that. If you've violated policy, if you've had improper contact with a child, that should go on to your next quote unquote employer. The reason that bill died is beyond me. And yes, I guess I'm a half-empty person. I expected that to pass. It didn't even get a vote. It didn't even get a vote. So I'm not going to stand here and be grateful that Massa gave me half. No, I want it all. I want it all because our children deserve it. For you guys here that work in this, that are going to do this for a living, I know it's hard. I know it's difficult. When I was a little boy, I was 15 years old, still going through a very difficult childhood, but I was in church. And in St. Louis, we went to this place called Cherokee Street, which is where all the drug addicts hung out. And I was there talking to people, and I saw this boy, and we started talking. He's a redheaded kid, and he's a few years older than me, and as we're talking, you could see that recognition pass between the two of us. We knew each other, we just didn't know where. And I remember eventually, we realized that we'd been in homes together. And so that was interesting. And I remember talking to him, and I said, you know, I'm here, you know, because just telling you about Jesus, you know, and what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I'm a prostitute. And I'm 15. I didn't know what that meant. I knew a prostitute meant. For some reason, I thought women paid him to sleep with them. That wasn't the case. And I exclaimed like a foolish little boy, wow, women pay you? And he shook his head quietly, said, no. That's not it at all. And I kind of recovered myself a little bit, and I said, well, you know what? I want you to know something. Jesus died for you. And this boy said, well, at least Jesus got to die. I couldn't say anything else. So I just walked away. And years later, I looked, and he had passed from HIV-related illnesses. This was in the 80s. But I realized, you know, it's not that he gave up, but we gave up on him. Your work is important. You're not going to know everything that you do. It's very unrewarding, but I want you to know there are people like me out there everywhere. I had a buddy of mine, I was mooching people for donations because I'm a politician. I got to get reelected. And believe me, when you make an enemy of, I make the enemy of the Democratic Party like nobody's business. So I'm raising money all the time because it is they're running people against me right now for this Netflix documentary. Thank you. And my buddy, I said, hey man, I need some money. You're a lawyer, give it up. And he's like, well, come out to the car. I need you to sign a book because I'd written a book. He said, my girlfriend has this book. She just wants your signature. I'm like, oh, okay, sure. $500 for a signature. We got this. I walk out and the book was in such horrendous shape. Every page had been dog-eared at some point in time. The edges, he said, yeah, this is her Bible. She carries it around every day. Your work counts. You might not know it. Had I not saw him on that day, I would have never known the impact of a book that doesn't sell that well, that not too many people read, had on one person. But I need you to also help me. Because I hear people talk about their survivors and their victims. It's the first thing out of their mouth. Reminds me of a young man, when I was a prosecutor, he was in jail for petty crimes. He was writing my office because he said he was a victim of child sex abuse. And you hear that a lot. And we followed up. He said, well, but the guy that victimized me when I was a little boy is writing me. And so we talked to him, and he started writing the man back. And he started reminiscing about events when he pulled him into the van, when he got him when his dad, he's supposed to be watching while his dad was at work, how he was abusing him. And the gentleman was writing back saying, yeah, that was, I'm glad you enjoyed that. Yeah. Well, good thing is, young man gets out. 2 years later, he's out of jail. Of course, we've got a case against this predator. Young man had a job. He had an 18-month-old little boy. He was there when that man pled 20 years is what he's going to have to do for his crimes. 2 weeks later, that young man committed suicide. You know why? It doesn't solve nothing. And didn't undo anything. But he thought it was a silver bullet. He thought it was what was going to change everything. But it's not. You have to close that book. You can't give your abuser the power over your adult life by not moving forward. When people say they're victims and they're survivors, I'm like, but you're a mother, right? You're your father? You're an uncle, you're an aunt, you're a doctor, you're a lawyer, you're a nurse. You are so many other things. Because we're not victims. That's an active term. And they can't be. I know after hearing this speech, some of y'all may judge me as not stable, loose cannon, angry or crazy, and you have no idea. Clearly. See, I know in many ways deep down in my heart that I am a monster. But we cannot continue to protect the monsters that created this monster. Because there's so many more out there just like me. Many worse. See, I'm actually lucky. Because there's something called a cycle of abuse. There are people out there right now confusing their childhood sex abuse for some form of love and affection. They're adults. They're reliving their childhood as sexual predators. And if you think I'm a monster, wait till you hear their logic. I try and speak when I can. I spoke to my wife last night about coming here. She said, why? My family hates this. I tell them it's worth it to help others. But this shortens my life every time. The ACEs study that they talk about, that's real. The dreams have already started. I haven't been able to sleep for a week. The unreasonable sadness, close myself off from others. I already started that. I'm gonna have to do that and deal with that for the next month and a half until I dig myself out of this hole. Each time I speak out, I pay a cost. But I know that sometimes you don't get to be the next Martin Luther King or John F. Kennedy, but you do get to inspire them. So if I can help motivate anyone to keep fighting, those of you that work in this field, or remind victims that they're not alone and they can't give up, even at the cost of my life, my family, and my relationships, then it is well with my soul. Thank you.